This Choircast podcast episode is brought to you by Wild Olive, where we host game-changing conversation about literature, culture, and the Bible. I'm Jennifer Bird, a biblical scholar.
And I'm Jean Patrol, a literature scholar. If you want to change your Bible reading game, you can try reading the Bible as literature.
The way writers such as Emily Dickinson, Octavia Butler, Ursula Le Guin, James Baldwin, or Tony Kushner do.
Every other week, we let modern writers give a fresh take on a familiar Bible story. Did you know that Emily Dickinson uses woman by the well imagery to explore lesbian desire?
That's wild. And doesn't June Jordan use a Gospel of Matthew image to describe the civil rights activist Fannie Lou Hamer?
Yes. And Tony Kushner's Angels in America uses apocalypse imagery to describe the fall of the Berlin Wall. That's wild.
If you like conversations about the Bible that could go anywhere, tune in to Wild Olive wherever you get your podcasts.
All right, what's up, everyone? Really glad you get to meet my friend Cornell Ellis today. Cornell is the executive director for theblockc.org. It's all about increasing the number of Black male educators in the school systems around the Kansas City area and surrounding areas. I've known Cornell for a few years now. Really love this dude. Every time we get together, I'm amazed at how, we speak the same language, but we use different words. Is that the way to say it? Or maybe we speak different languages but use the same words? No. Whatever's going on, we're in resonance with one another, harmonizing, and really appreciate him and the work that he does. He's got a partner, 2 little ones. I'm excited about his future and excited about the future of theblockc.org. I'll list all of his stuff in the show notes. I hope you'll find out more about him and about that nonprofit. His mission is different than some of the stuff that we're doing in Haiti. However, there's also a lot of indirect overlap. So as weird as my life has been, and for all of the challenging things I've been through, I think it's pretty cool that I get to play a small role in doing whatever I can do to help lovehaiti.org and theblockc.org. That's right, just drop the URLs of my 2 favorite nonprofits in one sentence, because some of you have been looking for places to support, and now you can just go straight to those websites and find out how to do it. I mean, if you're driving or running, you don't need to do it just right this moment. Keep your eyes on the road or on the trail, but just make a mental note to visit them later. For the rest of you, while you're listening, you can check them out. Look, I know how this usually works. From time to time in life, you get like a whisper, a prompt, a thought, an idea, and it goes something like this. Man, I should really be a part of something where I'm intentionally trying to make the world a better place. Or, gosh, I need to do a better job of giving back, I'd like to help people different from me. I wonder where I can do that. Then bam, all of a sudden, JF inserts lovehaiti.org or theblockc.org into your ears, and now you got a choice in front of you. You gonna help or not? And sometimes it's just that simple. Pick it up and run with it, people. Cornell and I talk about all kinds of things. January 6, 2021, my favorite day in American history. Good grief. American education system, a little history. I think we get into Colin Kaepernick a little bit. Per usual, with Cornell, I had no idea where the conversation was going to go. I just knew it was going to be good, and I wanted to introduce him to you guys. Hey, if you haven't signed up for my Substack newsletter, I don't know what you're waiting for. You can go free or you can go paid, and check this out. I have upped my Substack game lately because I've started providing access to some of my fictional short stories for the paid subscribed folks. Now, these stories are things that I began to write a few years ago as I started to reformulate my faith and shift some of my thinking. And I needed new ways to get stuff on the screen or on the paper to try to think through some stuff. So I started writing these narratives, these fiction stories to help me think differently. Like, wait, what would Jesus do in this situation? Or what is this group that's in power doing in this particular situation? what is it that I believe as these particular things are playing out? I just kept importing those thoughts into my writing, and honestly, fiction writing is very difficult. So these stories took me about 3 or 4 years to write, back and forth to my editor, back and forth to, sometimes I would talk about them in small group settings. I think I spoke about them sometimes on Sundays. Anyhow, it was very meaningful for me, but it was really hard work. So if you're someone wrestling with the powers, trying to figure out what you think about love, life, truth-telling, agency, yeah, I bet you'll dig these stories. And here's the thing. You can do a free 7-day trial on the Substack, and if you don't like it after 7 days, fine, you can unsubscribe. It'd be sad. I'd have my feelings hurt, but that's the way that it works, So I hope you subscribe there. I'm up to almost about 700 subscriptions. You know what I'd really love? 800. Really, what I'm going for is 1,000. And then if we get to 1,000, I'm going to throw a party, man. I think if it's a party, it'll probably just be me and my partner, Jonna. We'll probably go to Chipotle or something like that. Get an extra side of guac. That would be crazy, wouldn't it? But yeah, we'll call it a party. Okay, let's do this with Cornell. Again, the website is theblockc.org. That's theblock, BLOCKC.org. And we need your support, so find it and dive in. Peace, everyone.
I can get you a good list of people that I think would be really interesting for you to bring on. I'll think about it.
All right. Well, we got you today, so we're good.
Yeah, absolutely.
Tell me a little bit about yourself for the listeners, what you do and why you do it.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. It's always a pleasure. Part of the success and part of the work that we're doing is just making sure that the story is reaching more and more ears. So always a pleasure to sit and chat about the work that we're doing, because we know we're doing great work and we know we're doing work that's necessary. I'm a Kansas City native. I think it's always important to start first and foremost there. Like when I say Kansas City, I don't mean like Raytown or Blue Springs or Staley, right? Like I mean like Kansas City. 75th and Troost was where I spent most of my time with my parents. My grandmother lived on 41st and Prospect, so I spent a lot of my time there as well. And now I live on 27th and Wabash. So I can't quite get away from the town. Went to University of Missouri for a little while and came back and graduated from Avila University. So even my collegiate experience was less than 125 miles from Kansas City. I love to travel. I love to be further away from Kansas City, but everywhere that I go, I'm reminded of how much I love home and how much Kansas City means to me. And so you said that Block was increasing the Black male representation in Kansas City. That's true, and wider than that too, right? There's a national effort. Now that I've done this work for a little while, I'm starting to, like I said, travel a little bit. There's a national effort of folks out there working to increase representation of Black men in schools. Only 2% of educators in America are Black men. It's shrinking, actually, 1.7%, I think, right? And so how can we keep the guys that are there, right? Like I said, it's shrinking, right? And how can we talk to the next generation about what does being an educator look like? The United Nations identified like 5 to 7 of the world's greatest challenges coming up over the next 2 decades. And a teaching shortage and education equity was at the top of the list, right? This is not just the issue that Kansas City is facing, or that the state of Missouri is facing, or that the Midwest is facing, or that America is facing, right? Like this is a global issue that we'll continue to face if we don't start seriously reinventing the way that we think about education, right? My education experience wasn't great. I didn't love it. I was not a school kid. I was a kid that was often like getting kicked out of class. I was sitting in the hallway because I talked too much, or sitting in the principal's office because I had a scuffle because I was talking too much, right? And by middle school, my family got pretty fed up with that type of narrative. in the public school setting. So I went to the Kansas City public schools all the way through 8th grade. And then I went to a private Jesuit Catholic high school of all boys here in town. It's called Rockhurst High School. And had an unforgettable experience there for a myriad of reasons, right? And I think initially, I'll never forget my very first day at Rockhurst High School. I had never seen that many white people at once. Like I had been to, I've been to all black school. I had been to all black church. I had been to a concert before, like a Kanye West concert in 6th grade. It was my first concert. Really great time. The mall, maybe. But like when I was at the first day at Rockhurst, there's the common area where everybody kind of sits. And when people come in, you kind of see everybody in the morning. I remember my first day and literally thinking to myself, I've never seen this many white people in one place. You kind of have to look around and find black, and all the black people kind of sat in one spot in the commons. So all the black people kind of filter in, and the new freshmen are like, what's happening here? And then you look up. Well, first you could hear the black people, right? The black people, like the sophomores, juniors, and seniors, it's the first day of school, right? Welcome back, kicking it with the homies. And they are loud over there in the commons. And that's where all the black people kind of met up in the morning time. And, as a new black freshman, you never forget that experience of like being surrounded by people that don't look like you and then hearing your people first and then finding, this area. I mean, this was a space where the dean would have to come out once a week and tell us to quiet down, in the mornings, afternoons. And so I also understood too, then like the other side of the railroad tracks in terms of education, right? I went to the Kansas City public schools where there hasn't been a bond passed in 60 years, 70 years. And then I was at Rockhurst High School where tuition was $20,000 a year, right? And so I was in homes and in neighborhoods and at pools and at parties with people that I would never be able to encounter or have conversations with otherwise. And nobody from my family would able to encounter or have conversations with otherwise. So it started to become really clear to me that there was two games being played here, right? One with not even me, really. I'm from a middle-class family. Like I went to Rockhurst, but like my parents were the only graduating members of their siblings, right? And so that means their brothers and sisters was kicking it, right? And so that means my cousins are kicking it, right? And so I have cousins out here that are fighting one game. I still have a cousin that's serving life in the federal penitentiary, right? First cousin. And I have another, my sister and myself, and the other side of the railroad tracks, my friends from the other school that were fighting a different battle, right? And so that was my first kind of experience with education inequities. I lost my father in high school, unfortunately, to a battle of cancer that really kind of marked me, really kind of like, grief can do that to you. And so for the college years are really a lot of a wash. Right. He died senior year and I kind of floundered through college, Mizzou and Avila, like I mentioned before. And then once I finished, I decided that I wanted to coach, right? Similar story of lots of black men out there. I played college football all the way throughout, right? And so I loved the game. I didn't want to give that up. The easiest way to not, I'm not going pro, so I might as well go find somewhere to instruct the kids. And it turns out I was a great English teacher. So I ended up teaching English for about 8 years at a local charter school. And in that process, I founded several efforts to work towards educator diversity, right? So first thinking about just Black and Brown and educators in general through a conference called Amplify that's continued to endure and and evolve. And now Block, this organization to more specifically work with Black men. Like I said before, the data is very stark around Black male representation. And I think that as an educator, I saw every day how I was a surrogate father, surrogate uncle, cousin, brother to young people. And the impact that makes is undeniable. And if we could just add more guys that look like me, sound like me, come from the place I come from. Dr. Gloria Ladson Billings is the grandmother of this research, right? It came out in the 80s. We've been talking this shit for 50 years, y'all. Like, if a teacher looks like, talks like, and has experiences like their students, then the students are going to have better achievement. And so it's just a really simple equation for us, right? Like, let's support Black men. Let's make sure Black men are staying in schools. And yeah, there's going to be more problems in education. It's going to fix everything. Of course not. Like I said, we need to seriously reimagine the way we even think about education. But, you know, one first step, I think, what I found to be a good solution was adding more Black men to the equation.
Yeah, I think so. And tell me, the obvious question then is, you're adding Black men so that young Black people can relate to that. But why is it good for the white people to have a Black male educator too?
Absolutely. It's important for all students to see a diverse work teaching force, right? I like to tell this anecdote. I work with a family here in Kansas City. I tutor with a family that is pretty well off. And that family went to school at one of the most expensive schools in Kansas City. They live in one of the most exclusive neighborhoods in Kansas City. They belong to one of the most well-to-do country clubs, and they spend all of their social time in different zip codes than I do, right? And when I ended up, by happenstance, coming on to tutor with them, the first Black male educator this young man had ever had, right? First and only. He was a sophomore in high school. And the impact that relationship had on all of us, right? Like, it doesn't just impact him, right? It impacts the educator as well, right? As there's an exchange of culture, there's an exchange of values, there's a deeper understanding and love for each other and each other's values and communities. There's a narrative that gets told that runs through many people's minds when they think of a person that looks like me, right? I'm walking down the street, I got locks, I have dark skin, I'm a relatively big guy on the streets with normal people, and that carries a certain stereotype, right? Even if you don't have those types of explicit biases running through your head, there's implicit biases as well, right? This kid may not have ever heard that Black people were dumb, but did he ever go ask a Black person for help with his homework? Had he ever collaborated with a Black person to complete an assignment, or turned in an assignment to a Black person to have them check over it? And has a Black person ever had authority over him to be able to tell him this isn't good enough and to go sit down and try it again? And for that young white male who's going to be a change maker in this world, right? He's going to endow a fortune. Now, he can have one perspective, implicit or explicit, in his brain about what people that look like me are for, what people that look like me are, what we do, what we participate in, or he can have a different image based on a personal experience and relationship that he's had with a Black male educator, right? And that makes all the difference. You know, he may have he may have had Black friends before, right? But what did they do together? Listen to music and talk about tennis shoes and go play basketball together occasionally, right? Again, an academic presence that looks like this shifts an entire narrative for a person's perspective. Now, when he turns on the nightly news, inevitably he sees a person that looks like me being portrayed as a criminal. Now he can say, well, all people that look like that don't do that, because Mr. Ellis looks like that and he doesn't do that, right? That must be an individual act, right? And unfortunately, right, as minority citizens, I say minority with quotes strongly, because the data says that people of color are no longer the actual minority, but they're portrayed, right, in a certain way as if, right, all Black people do a certain thing, right? When one person does something, and we do it to ourselves too. When Black man mess up, he messed up all of us. Damn, bro. He really set us back, right? And with white people or the majority culture, that's never the case, right? It's never that like, look at those white people over there. It's like, look at that one individual gangster thug, right? And that's all I think that people of color are seeking as well, right? Individual identities and not like this group collective responsibility. Whenever there's a mass shooter, like Black people be on edge, like, oh my God. Please don't be Black. Please don't be Black. Please don't be Black.
Right.
And they rarely are, let's be clear. But this idea of that collective identity, I think, is something that when you have individual experiences, you can overcome those narratives and start to create new narratives of your own, right? That are more accurate to how the world is around you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, couldn't agree more. I want to ask you something about teaching, but just what you mentioned about the mass shooting made me think, because a lot of the times, seems like the majority of the time, they're not Black, they're white. And I've thought many times.
White and male.
Yep. I've thought many times, what the narrative would be like if it was Black. I mean, it'd just be different.
War would have already started.
Yeah.
The war would have already started. We would have had, right? Talk about gun laws.
Yeah.
If it would have been Black people killing people, gun laws would be going crazy right now. But it's because this they guns that we've taken away.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Right? And then what about same thing? What about January 6th, 21? If those would have been non-Caucasians climbing into the Capitol, bro, we would have just imploded, man.
Please. They wouldn't have gotten that far, right?
No.
There would have been like mass murder.
Mm-hmm.
We've seen mass murder on that scale, right? If for our listeners have heard of the MOVE bombings in Philadelphia, the United States government dropped literal bombs on neighborhoods in Philadelphia for their civil rights engagement, right? We are seeing even still to this day that civil rights can be stamped out real quickly. Well, a little bit of tear gas, some of them rubber bullets, they'll shut y'all up. But nah, January 6th was not that.
That was a joke. I mean, I didn't need any more evidence that we were jacked up, but that was, to me, like, that was such a defining moment. And so it would have been so different if it hadn't been Caucasian. So it's just a complete joke.
And privilege, right? Like such a defining moment of privilege. I think that so many people that denied privilege up until that point could no longer look themselves in the mirror and say that white people don't have privilege.
And think about how ironically stupid it is. It's the white people generally. We're probably overgeneralizing because, to your point, not all white people.
Again, right?
But generally speaking, it's the Caucasian who has been the one who has talked so much about, it's the immigrant it's the migrant that's going to take over this country, and look what they're doing with their agenda. Now, so who was the group in the history of the United States, the only group to attack the Capitol? Well, in modern United States, there's a bunch of white people, man. It's just crazy.
The War of 1812 also.
Right.
That was the last time this happened, right? I think America has several examples. I wrote my senior college dissertation on Greek culture, Greek and Roman culture, but my second choice was about how the United States has been imperializing, annexing territories since the jump, right? Like Hawaii, like Texas, Florida, Hawaii, the Philippines, right? Like there's so many ways that the United States has imposed its white dominant culture, right? And I think, like when I say white people, like I have a white partner, and she understands, right? When I say white people, lots of white friends. Some of them get it, some of them don't, because they've never actually asked me, what do you mean when you say white people? I mean white culture, right? White dominant, right, ideas, right? White dominant ideologies, white ways of acting, white thinking. I rarely mean white persons when I say white people, right? If I say that's some white people shit, then that's like, it's based on dominant white culture, right? Like not necessarily based on a white person that I know that does that.
Right. Yeah. So before I forget, I wanted to ask you about we have mutual friends, and I've been surprised to learn over the last few years that frequently when a black male educator, like when he's a teacher, he gets moved into like a principal administrative work more quickly sometimes and out of the classroom. And what are the pros and the cons with, I didn't ask that question right, but what's going on with not being in the classroom and moving into the administration, and what's good and bad about that?
Yeah, some people talk about it like matriculation, right? Like how are we like upward mobility in the education system? It's tough. Like I think even inside the education system, there's language of like, I'm just a teacher, right? Oh no, I'm just a teacher, right? And this like idea that when you move up from being a teacher, then you start to become important, right? I think there's a secondary concept around like pay, and the one of the unique challenges that Black male educators face is their position in their families or in their communities juxtaposition with their position in schools, right? And the pay that comes along with it. And so, like, I was just talking to my financial planner. I was just telling, like, I am the patriarch of my family right now. My father is gone. My grandfather is gone. I'm the only boy. My uncles are gone for the most part. Like, I got to call my other boy cousin and be like, bruh, like, it's just my first cousin. Like, it's just us around here, right? I have a sister. So, like, when you think about it that way, like the role, and it was so funny. My financial advisor is the dad. I just found this out today. His son, I graduated with at Rockhurst. We're 2 years apart, but I know his son, right? He's a Black guy from Rockhurst. And so the role that he has in his family, right, as the patriarch, right? Think about the role that your grandfather has in your family, right? He's got the most dough. You go to his house and you hang out on some big land, probably, and he's got all that great advice, and like that is like non-existent in my family, right? And I think as that patriarch too, right? He takes care of your mother, right? Like I could go clean my mother's gutters, right? I cut my mother's grass. They take care of the finances and the wills, right? And all these things that I'm a 30-year-old man, right? Like I don't have all the information that I need to make a lot of these decisions. And so as the only guy in my family, there's a little bit more pressure to make more money and kind of take care of the people around me, right? And that's the case with a lot of Black men as we talk about the compound poverty over generations, right? The lack of healthcare accessibility for Black families, right? Lots of like the life expectancy for Black men is like under 60, I think. It's like 57. My dad died at 57, right? And so when you start thinking about it in that sense, like I gotta make money right now, right? And so moving from a $45,000 a year job as a teacher to being in an administrative role where you're making $65,000, $75,000 a year is like a no-brainer, right? On the other side of what you're talking about, I think that they often get pigeonholed into roles that are very discipline oriented, right? So you may have an assistant principal of curriculum and instruction. You also have like a dean of culture, right? And so often the Black male is this dean of culture, dean of student services, right? Assistant principal of student life, right? You hear a lot of these titles and roles that really just mean when a nigga's acting up, when other Black kids are acting up, you gotta go grab them, right? Mr. Ellis, will you go get so-and-so, he tripping. I can't deal with him. You the dean, called so-and-so's mom, right? Because you're the only one that's got a relationship with her. You're the only one in the building that can break up the fight, right? And so a lot of these advancements or positive matriculation, what was the other word I used earlier? Advancement through education, careers, and degrees are out of necessity. They're pigeonholed into roles that are limiting And I think third, I think along with that second piece, right, that they're pigeonholing the roles, they're limiting, they're pigeonholing the roles that are not sustainable, right? And so now that I am the dean of the whole school, I'm everybody's daddy. I'm everybody's uncle. I'm everybody's cousin. Like that scenario that I just described to you, where there's a fight, so and so got kicked out of class, so and so only talked to me, so and so's mama's up here, she the only one that'll get her to calm down. That happens in one day, right? That's one day. I can't do that for 15 years. I can't do that for 25 years. I can't do that for 35 years. And so, and again, we only talking 75K, 80K. We're not talking six figures here, right? And so the opportunity cost starts to weigh on us after time. It's called the black tax, that we do a couple PDs on it. You know, this idea, there's like an invisible tax of wearing multiple hats in a building, right? For example, when my last year of teaching, I was the only Black male in the building that taught a tested subject. So I taught seventh grade English. I was the grade team chair. So I was responsible for the culture for the grade team. I was a grade level content lead. So I was responsible for the English responsibilities for the seventh grade English team. I was the diversity, equity, and inclusion chair. So I led all the PDs around DEI, which means I also led all the Black History Month efforts, the Hispanic Heritage Month efforts, Women's History Month efforts. I was the guy that did community meeting every Friday, right? So we got all the kids together every Friday and we did a whole class activity where I'm yelling for an hour, right? Literally teaching to the entire class. I did that for 4 years straight. I led the cafeteria for 6 years straight. I was the head founding varsity basketball coach and track coach. I think that's it. Right. But
that's a lot.
That's a lot. Right. And so when I get to the building at 6 and I don't leave the building until 8 p.m. Right. And educators call it Darktober, right? Once the time shifts, normal people probably don't notice, but teachers are in school. They go to school when it's dark and they don't leave school until it's dark. And it's not a sustainable lifestyle. It's just not. And that all those pressures, right, end up leading to the data that Black men are out of teaching within 3 years, right? So that matriculation that you're stating, right, they teach for 1 or 2 years and then they get shot up to a dean role. And by year 4, they're shot out.
Yeah. And a lot of what you're talking about for people listening, obviously is true of white people too, in terms of the Darktober and all those kinds of things. But what I hear you saying is the added, and it's so true, the added pressure and layers of that get factored in when you're a person of color for lots of different reasons. And the whole dean of culture, is that an actual term or is that a more just informal?
No, absolutely.
I mean, because
one of our partners just hired the only Black man in the building, and they're dean of culture.
Because if it's not formal, informally it works too. Because a lot of times, especially in school settings, Black people are thought of as the people who are really connected with culture, and are really understand that, and so, which is cool, but also it's pigeonholing, like you said too. And there's so many more things that Black people can be, obviously.
Yeah, and the person that's in charge of curriculum and instruction is a white woman. The person that's in charge of data and collections or data and testing, right? Because Black people, clearly they're good at culture, but they can't do numbers, right? They're good at the handshakes, but when it comes to the tests and achievement, let's get the white people in here, right? And that's the piece that continues to that's scientific racism, right? We're talking some very deep-seated American history here. I was just watching, I love the History Channel, for those of you out there, history nerds, and they were doing Oh man, it was so cool. I think it was the 761st Tanking Battalion from World War II. And it was the first Black tanking battalion in American history. And to kind of set up the scene and the context, they went back over a lot of old Army science and data that talked about segregation of the Army, and how Black soldiers just weren't thought to have the mental capacity to be able to fight in war, right? They were thought of as cowardice and not quick thinking enough, and not able to solve problems, right? And so they would often recruit large numbers of Black soldiers and never let them go to war, because they didn't believe that Black soldiers like had the gumption to be able to fight. Same thing in the NFL, Black quarterbacks. And people don't really understand the science, the racist science behind these arguments. Like a prototypical quarterback is because Black brains can't handle the pressure, the reads, the staying calm, right? Like all these things that are necessary to the leadership, necessary to be a great quarterback, right? Like weren't deemed as Black qualities for. Like, this isn't just like fringe thought, right? Like Harvard, Yale, like the top scientists in the world were thinking these things around racial science. Like, you were a dummy if you thought Black people were smart, right? Like, that's just what science said. And so even if those things have been unwritten from science, they still are a part of culture. They're still a part of popular thought. They're still a part of, and they manifest themselves in our daily activities, right? And so they're still a part of education. And in the ways that we promote people, in the ways that we think about their skill sets, in the ways that that we ask them to contribute to our society. Like I was saying before, you might be asking Black people about the newest shoes that are out, but have you talked to a Black person about the stocks today? Have you might be listening to the new song and it's by a Black person, so you text your Black friend and say, hey, have you heard this? But are you talking to that same Black person about the book that you're reading, or taking book suggestions from them? Even a step further, asking them what they're reading at the time, right? Like, I don't know, these are small thoughts, and some people call them microaggressions, right? But there's nothing microcosmic about them. They are very aggressive. That term is correct. They may be misled. They may be undirect, like misdirectional aggressions, right? But they are definitely things that are felt and quantified by people of color on a daily basis.
Yes, you bring up about 18 things I want to talk about. But want to reiterate or just reemphasize the Black quarterback thing. First of all, I ain't ashamed to tell you,
Your son's a white quarterback.
Well, yeah, exactly. That too. That's a whole nother subject. But yes, he is a white quarterback. But no, I was going to say something cool about Doug Williams when he was the first Black quarterback to play, and I was always a big fan of him, and that was just huge when he got to play for the Redskins and had really one of the most amazing games. And I was just going to say, the Black QB thing is definitely changing, and so I'm really thankful for that. And that's
but I think
cool.
we also have to keep a close eye on changing how and for why, right? Like Patrick Mahomes is a light-skinned person, right? Jalen Hurts and there's more intra-racial layers here that exist when it comes to light and dark, right? Like you're still being anti-Black by preferencing lighter skinned Black people, right? And I think that like the care, like you should see the way that people react to my children who are mixed. They are so beautiful, Jonathan. Oh my God, your children are gorgeous. I bet those people think they're being so nice. I bet those people, and they are. I bet those people are thinking that they're being well intentioned, right? Like no second thought. I just told these children that they were beautiful, and some of them may even think I saw a mixed race couple and told them that their children are beautiful, right? They may even be thinking that. But I think subconsciously people are preferring, right? You should use the wigs, the Mahomes wigs, right? The curly hair, the fair skin, the light eyes. These are white beauty standards that are preferenced, even in the Black community, right? Because closer to whiter is better, right? And so even in the NFL, you listen to some of their language. You got to listen to the way they talk. And I'm a big fan of Dan Orlovsky. Dan is the real deal.
He'll tell you
to
like
the way
it
he
is.
talks.
Yeah.
Dan will call these white folks out in a minute for saying the wrong thing. They're often even still, right, switching to Black quarterbacks because of their athleticism.
Yeah, right.
Oh man, this kid is so athletic.
Yeah.
He can make the throws. He can move around outside the pocket. It really wasn't until last year you start hearing people make a concerted effort to talk about Jalen Hurts as like a brain guy also, right? You hear some of the Black quarterbacks saying themselves. You hear Pat say it all the time. I'm a throw first guy. I'm a throw first guy. I'm a throw first guy. And that's a very intentional messaging that they're putting out there, because traditionally the Michael Vicks, the Flutys, the
Lamar Jackson.
Who was the guy you mentioned?
Oh,
of course, Lamar.
Doug
but going
Williams.
all the way back to Doug Williams, right? Yeah. These are guys that are valued for their legs, and not necessarily for their brain. But right? Listen to the way they talk about Tom Brady. Listen to the way they talk about. Oh yeah. They don't talk about Justin Herbert like that. Yeah. No. You know what I mean?
Yeah. It is. It's a very fascinating thing, and I agree with you. There's been change, but I totally see that too. And there's still that tendency to slip back into calling the one person an athlete over against the other. I do think Black quarterbacks, it's tough growing up too, because not always, but the numbers play out that Black people have that athletic gift. And so now you're the best athlete on the field. And as a young player, you don't have to throw as much. And so you're put in positions where you're just naturally going to run. And so, I think there's been a real concerted effort. I've seen it even as my boy grew up in it. We started to see more and more Black people and more Black kids who were actually being coached versus just showing up.
To throw.
Yeah. Versus just showing up and using their legs. And because I feel like it put them in a tough spot when they get older, because when you've been doing that your whole life, it's tough to change.
Well, when you really get to playing high school ball, if you're playing in a high school program that's worth its snuff and crackers, you're going to need to throw an out route. You're going to need to throw a deep comeback. You're going to need to have to throw a post and a corner. And if you can't complete, it's not really till like the college ball. I really love this game, man. The college ball, when you see that, now you're starting to see the opposite hash 10-yard out. Now that throw is a throw.
Yeah.
Right. And then at the NFL level, you see the corner route that can beat a cover 2. Right. If you can sneak in that corner route in the honey hole, if you can look off the safety, get the safety to stay on his hash, and then drop that ball in, now you can go to the NFL.
That's right. We've got some nice phrases: snuff and crackers and honey hole. I don't think any of those things have ever been said on this podcast before. While we're on the subject, Colin Kaepernick, I don't know if you and I have ever talked about it, but dude, I was a fan of Colin Kaepernick. I believe in what he was trying to do. I'm not an expert, so I don't know. I haven't even really read about him over the last few years. And so I'm not going to try to weigh in on too heavy, other than when he had an opportunity to to do the big tryout thing about 2 years ago. Do you remember that?
To get back in the NFL?
Yeah, him and his camp, obviously really pushed for it to happen. And then they got like some official tryout. It was down south somewhere. And then you'll have to look it up. And then last minute, he changed some of the stuff and moved to another field across town, and then about half of the NFL guys didn't show up. Anyhow, I just don't like the rhetoric is, well, it's he's not playing because he's a black guy, because I've seen a lot of QBs in the NFL that were really good for a couple of years, then they had a bad couple of years, and then they were out. I'm not sure that's the case with him, but
yeah, I don't think so. I mean, why would a dude want to play? I mean, unless of course you love the game, you want to, like, you missed the game, I'm sure. Then my brain, if I'm in his shoes and I got a contract from Nike for not playing football, like, I'm good. You know what I mean? It actually behooves me. You know, I hope he don't hear this and he gonna come after me or something, but it actually behooves me to, in a media stunt, to make it look like, you know, I don't think everything is as authentic as it always is. You know, I'm starting to find that out more, the different kind of spaces that I get into. I think that all the time, I think things start in a way that there was always like a pure start to something, right? Like, now I remember I think he's got like a Netflix thing out maybe, that's like autobiographical, but he's got like, I saw something else that like kind of chronicled his story. Maybe it was like 30 for 30 or Untold or something. But like, it talks about like what happened in the season, you know, like how it actually started, and like how he was like seeking out ways to.
When he first started to kneel, you mean?
Yeah, like he was seeking out ways to like peacefully protest, like because he sat for the first couple of weeks, and then that didn't go over well, and he like, and this will really change the perspective for me. He like reached out to some military people, and like it was actually a military dude that told him to kneel. That like it was like that was actually protocol in the military to like that's a way that they do that. And so when I heard that, like, that kind of changed the game for me in terms of its origins and kind of how, you know, was he trying to reach a goal? I never knew what goal he was trying to reach, right? And that's really, to me, that's interesting. Like, it makes me think about so the class that I teach is called Rebels from Slavery, right? And so I teach an African American history class that focuses on slave rebellions, right? And so we start at Cato at the Stonewall Rebellion, and we finish at John Brown. And, you know, John Brown is like the cream's crop, right? Everybody loves a good John Brown story. My kids was on John Brown's head. Why is he even doing this? What does he have to gain from this? What's his actual goal from blowing up Harper's Ferry? What's he actually really going to accomplish besides start some shit, which he did, right? Which is all he was really trying to do. And I think Colin kind of strikes me as the same type of way. Like, what are you really going to accomplish about police brutality in America by taking a kneel on the national stage? Create more conversation about it, create more awareness about it, I guess, sure. More so what you created was a shitstorm. And you knew that's what you was doing.
Yeah.
And I think he's kind of leaned into it.
Yeah, I think so too, maybe. But also, yeah, it's just, the thing just got bigger than him so fast. And I just think there's some people that got involved that probably didn't have the best intentions. But I agree with you. Initially, it felt like that.
And I mean, even all those like Black Lives Matter stuff, all that stuff went south, right? Geez. Like, it turned out all those people were crooked and doing something funny with the money. And like I said, I think everything has its origins in authenticity. But like you said, when things get bigger than you, I'm in that space right now, right? When you're looking at hundreds of thousands of dollars in the bank, or you're looking at connections across the country, or a mission and vision that's bigger than you, how are you going to act then? Right? And I think there's
who are you going to let around you? Who's going to speak into that with you and help you?
Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. I feel bad for Kaepernick, because I think that might have happened some. What about you? Do you, what do you have? I won't tell you what my routine is, but do you have a routine when the Star Spangled Banner is being played, or do you just hand over heart, sing the song, go for it?
Oh, I don't do my hand over heart. Yeah, I'm usually trying to stay low key because I'm not involved. I didn't kneel back then. I think I stopped playing in 2014. So like in games, it was never really like I never really even like, it's more of it gives me goosebumps because I know I'm about to go play some football.
Right.
I know that like that the land of the free, home of the brave, even still, I still get goosebumps and that's grab my shit up and I'm on kickoff team. Let's go.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Like, but now, even seeming tough, I go to some schools and they do the Pledge of Allegiance still. And it's like, I won't. I will not pledge my allegiance. And I know what the second verse of that song sounds like. So like I really know I'm not gonna sing that. I'm not if I have a hat on, pretty sure I keep it on. Pretty sure I don't face the flag. I'm not trying to like make a show out of it, but I'm definitely not about to like go out of my way to give respect to a flag and a symbol. I'm not saying that America hasn't done anything for me. I'm saying a flag and a symbol that still largely represents oppression of people that look like me.
Yeah, man. It's complicated. We've probably just pissed a whole bunch of people off. No one's going to listen to my podcast again. But what I'm going to say is, yeah, pretty similar. I don't put my hand over my heart. And I usually close my eyes and I just pray. I think this is a good time to pray for the country, pray for the politicians, pray for forgiveness. And like who really cares what I do? It may not mean anything, but it means something to me, and I'm always feeling awkward and tense in the middle of that. And
where does it usually happen? Like at football games?
Yeah, it's usually football. Yeah. I mean, any
have to like.
events.
I mean, you're in the stands, so most people stand up and like turn a certain direction.
Oh yeah, take your hats off.
Like
oh yeah. And it's a whole deal. And it's complicated because I'm like you. I'm really thankful for the country that we have. I'm thankful for people who have given up their lives for us to have what we have.
Absolutely.
But I'm also never not suspicious about the military empire that we are a part of, and the way it's sacrificed our young people, white and black. It's just it's just skewed. It's just off, man. And
I'm also proud to be an American, right? Like I think that as a historian, I recognize that America is a very unique place that and this is kind of like, we're almost out of time, but the faith-based piece, like I believe that America is a part of God's will, right? I think America is a part of the human being's growth and trajectory towards a better world, right? Like America was an invention in the face of an even greater oppression and monarchies, right? And an even greater oppression and larger wealth gap, right, that we experience now. And this idea of like everybody gets a vote, everybody gets a say, we all are linked together to do this, even if in practice it didn't really happen for a while, right? 200 years. And arguably they're trying to slide backwards now, right? But the theory is what love is, right? Like I think that you're right from the very beginning, right? Like God doesn't control things, love doesn't control, but I think love wills, right? I think love
has an intention.
Love is a current. Yes, love is a force, right? Just like Star Wars, right? Like I think that it can move things in a direction, right? And when you operate from that type of mindset and frequency, you are, I don't like using hierarchical language, but like, or chronological, but I think that you're like enlightening yourself, right? Yeah. Like you're stretching yourself. And the aliens out there are still laughing at us, right? Like we're not even ready for the aliens to reveal themselves to us, right? Like they're waiting until we get to a point of human consciousness where we're not trying to blow each other up all the time for them to be able to feel like it's safe to reveal themselves to us, right? Like there's a higher level of consciousness with the universe that human beings we're on the right track, but it's going to take, there are other beings in the universe that have evolved right beyond spears, and so we still got spears in our hands with these damn guns. We can't even go.
We still got spears.
We can't even go a week without killing each other. It's unbelievable.
It is unbelievable.
Unbelievable.
Well, I didn't know for sure we had aliens, so that's good to know. Got that dialed in.
They are out there, bud.
They could
Even
be.
the government admits it now. Government admits it.
It's
not a could be anymore, bro. The government that lies to us every single day has finally admitted it. They've known that they've been here for a long time now, too. They've known that they've been here. The dude came on TV 2 weeks ago. It was literally like less than a month ago, and he was making because they have to give a report every year since 2017. They created a new committee, and the committee has to give a report every year on UABs. And this year, the dude came out and was like, have you recovered any life forms? And he was like, yes. It was like, are these life forms non-Earth? And he was like, no. Like, so are you saying that you form non-Earth life forms? He's like, we'll have to follow up with that offline. It's like, clearly he got questioned into a corner, and like, yeah, they have alien bodies here on the Earth.
Well, even if they don't, I wouldn't be surprised. This cosmos is gargantuan. It's expanding all the time. There's all kind of stuff going on, but
all kinds of stuff going on out there.
That's right.
I really like Guardians of the Galaxy. Have you seen Guardians of the Galaxy?
I haven't seen the most recent one, but I've seen some of the others. Pretty fun.
Yeah, I'm gonna spoiler alert. They get worse.
They get worse. Okay.
They get worse. The first one's the best one, but I like that idea. Star Trek, Star Wars. I really do believe that there's a whole thing out there for us.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised at all. Why we got to be so anthropocentric? There's more out there. Right.
Well, you have to understand who you are before you go out there and find other things, right? And so human beings are just, we haven't even figured out our own, we haven't reconciled our own history, right? Getting back to American history. We can't even admit that we kept Black folks as slaves, hardly.
Right.
That man's trying to tell us that Black people benefited from slavery.
Who, Kanye?
Wild. No, that's a different podcast. I'll go in on all that. No, Ron DeSantis.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, that's a whole different podcast. All right, man. Well, we had no idea what we were going to talk about, and there you have it. Love you. Appreciate what you're doing.
Thank you always.
Keep up the good work, and talk to you soon, man.
We will talk soon.
All right, buddy. I'll put your information in the show notes too, because I know people listening are going to give us some money or something.
Absolutely. At the very least, have them connect with me. I would love to talk to folks. We're going to start doing some kind of tours of the school that we are at, and kind of visiting with some of the fellows, and giving folks the opportunity. Because I think this question of like, when did you have your first Black male educator? Right? Like, that's one that many people have never even thought to themselves. And so if that's a question that you've never thought to yourself, reach out to me. Let's chat.
Yeah. And you know what my dream is long term? It's going to be a few years because Haiti's such a mess, but get you down to Haiti and meet our principals and teachers, dude. That's going to be so much fun when that happens.
I would love that. I would absolutely love that. I think of course, I teach a slave rebel unit. So of course, Toussaint is right in the middle of it. And just the symbol that island holds, and just be able to go. I've also read In the Time of the Butterflies about Rafael Trujillo and the Parsley Massacres. I
haven't read it, but I'm aware of the book.
Interesting text. Oh man, great story. So I can't wait for that. Yeah, you just name it.
I know. Well, it's going to be a few years, but that's also for another podcast. All right, bud, I'm going to hit stop, and God bless. Have a great day.
Thank you. You too, bud.
All right. Thanks to Cornell and to the work he's doing trying to make the world a better place. And speaking of making the world a better place, man, I'm doing some writing that I'm really proud of. It's called Indigo, The Color of Grief. I think it has a chance to be special. It's being endorsed by people like John Caputo, Catherine Keller, Paul Young, who wrote The Shack. But I need your involvement. So make sure to subscribe to my Patreon or Substack page, Jonathan_Foster, or just click on the little link I've provided conveniently for you at jonathanfosteronline.com so that you can be aware of all of that stuff as it unfolds. Cool. Messy. Have a great day. Peace.